key day at the Burgundy and Gold headquarters as the quarterback returns to the field, while the star receiver surprises everyone by resuming practice. But the decision at the quarterback position will shake the fanbase. Is the losing streak ending? Or are we still stuck? There is an unexpected return, uncertainty, and pressure for results. If you love the intense Commanders drama and want to stay one step ahead in the internal battles that will define the future, subscribe right now and stick around because everything is blowing up here. Today in Washington, there is no tranquility and the secondary news leaves a bitter taste. But at the same time, some hope for those who still believe in an improbable comeback. The city is still vibrating after an insufferable bye-week hunger for victory and the uncertainty reigning over who can save this ship with an uncertain course. The Burgundy and Gold fanbase knows that every piece of news, no matter how small, can be the start or the end of an era. After 6 consecutive defeats that have sunk the team to a record of 3 wins and 8 losses, the atmosphere in the capital is dense and questions are raining down from all angles. Some blame the coaching staff led by Dan Quinn, who arrived with high expectations after his successful stint in Dallas. Others point directly at the injuries that decimated the roster at the least opportune moment, transforming what looked like a playoff team into a franchise fighting for pride and nothing else. And many simply cannot believe that the team that started the season with legitimate hopes of returning to the NFC Championship after getting there last year is now 4 games away from a wild card spot and sitting in the 14th place in the conference. The day started with a bombshell that raises hair and shakes the foundations of FedEx Field. Jaden Daniels, that quarterback who thrilled the entire fanbase last season and was crowned NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, returned to practice after that brutal blow to the elbow that had him out for weeks. That fateful November 2nd in Week 9 against the Seattle Seahawks, Daniels was sacked violently in the fourth quarter by 2 defenders who collapsed on him simultaneously, and the image of his elbow completely dislocated resonated across the country, reviving nightmares of the past. For Washington fans, the doctors initially ruled out severe structural damage to ligaments or bones, but the franchise decided not to put him on the injured list as a precaution, hoping for a quick return that never came. Week after week of accumulated frustration. After the bye, the medical staff reevaluated him exhaustively, and today, Monday, he returns to the field in jog-through format, although without authorization for full physical contact, which means he can throw and move but cannot be hit or tackled in real game simulations. Coach Dan Quinn, known for his cautious approach with injuries since his time in Seattle and Atlanta, does not give away anything about when he will be ready to face Denver this Sunday, and the uncertainty consumes the fanbase that desperately seeks answers. The franchise never recovered from the emotional and tactical impact of losing its franchise QB, that same one who was Offensive Rookie of the Year just a season ago, and took us, even if for a magical sigh, to savor the NFC Championship. After endless decades of suffering, Daniels threw for more than 3,568 yards. That miraculous year of 2024 scored 31 combined touchdowns between passes and runs, completed 69% of his throws with barely 9 interceptions, and became the first rookie quarterback in modern team history to win a playoff game on DC soil, something not even Robert Griffin III achieved. In his memorable season of 2012, the city adored him instantly. Kids wore his number to jerseys everywhere. Stores ran out of inventory and hopes skyrocketed exponentially for this campaign of 2025, with analysts predicting a record of 10 to 12 victories and assured presence in playoffs. But reality has been ruthless and cruel to all of us. In only 11 games played this season, Daniels has played barely 6 complete ones and has come out healthy from only 3 of them, an alarming statistic that puts his long-term durability in doubt. First, it was the grade 1 knee sprain in the second week against Green Bay that left him out 2 consecutive games, forcing Mariota to take the reins in painful losses. Then in Week 7 against Dallas in a critical division game, a severe pull in the right hamstring took him off the field in the third quarter and left him absent 1 more week, just when the team desperately needed to add victories. And finally, that brutal elbow dislocation against Seattle that marginalized him until today, 5 full weeks without seeing him in action, 5 weeks of collective agony. In total, Daniels has thrown for 1,184 yards in this truncated season, with 8 touchdowns and only the interceptions, completing 62.5% of his passes with a rating of 94.4. Decent numbers, but reflecting barely 6 games of sample size. In the ground game, he has run 54 times for 262 yards, and to more scores, maintaining that dynamism that made him special. But clearly, without the explosiveness of his rookie year, this makes the debate explode in every corner of the city, from the barbershops of Southeast to the sports bars of Georgetown. Should a guy return who, while not repeating the magical shine of 2024, still represents the greatest hope of the franchise long-term? History tells us that every time Washington has forced the premature return of its injured stars, the long-term outcome is usually pain, bitterness, and ruined careers. Remember Robert Griffin III, his devastating knee injury in the playoffs of 2012 against Seattle, when Mike Shanahan let him play clearly injured, marked the beginning of the end of a golden era that promised a dynasty. They brought him back ahead of time in 2013. His explosiveness disappeared, his confidence evaporated, and his performance was never the same, eventually being cut barely 4 years after being the second overall selection of the draft. Years later, Kirk Cousins also suffered the consequences of a rushed management of minor injuries that ended up affecting his confidence in the pocket and his toxic relationship with the front office. If Daniels sees action this Sunday, it has to be because he is 100% recovered, because mishandled injuries have destroyed entire years in DC, and we cannot repeat those errors of the past. But also, leaving him out feeds conspiracy theories on social media and total discouragement among those who believe that only he can save the close of the season, and who knows, force the mathematical miracle of a wild card that today seems completely impossible with the team 4 games away. National and local experts are completely divided in their opinions. Some prominent analysts like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport argue that Daniels must sit the rest of the year to avoid permanent damage to an elbow that is still not clear if it will withstand the brutal physical punishment of the NFL week after week. Others like Chris Sims and Tony Romo point out that playing these last 6 games would give him invaluable experience against playoff defenses, would reestablish the confidence of the organization and locker room teammates, and would allow him to develop chemistry with the receivers who will be on the roster next year. Meanwhile, Marcus Mariota will continue under center this Sunday against Denver. If Daniels does not receive full medical clearance, a veteran of 31 years, who has done what is possible with his limitations, but clearly is not the long-term answer for anyone. Mariota completed an impressive 77.3% of his passes into limited appearances during 2024, including that memorable winning touchdown to McLaurin in the last regular season game, with barely 2 seconds remaining, a moment that made half the stadium cry. But in 2025, with 5 games as a starter, his numbers have been pedestrian. He has thrown for approximately 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, with a rating below 8.5, reflecting an offense that lacks the dynamism and magic that Daniels brings with his fast legs and his precise arm. The offense becomes predictable under Mariota. Rivals adjust their defensive schemes, stacking the box against the runner, and defeats accumulate inexorably. And what do you honestly think? Do you prefer to take care of Daniels for the future of 2026, or have him play even in the middle of this storm of 3-8? As soon as we assimilated the Daniels bombshell, another completely unexpected alert arises that shakes social media. Terry McLaurin, the undisputed #1 receiver and visible face of the Burgundy attack in the worst moments of the franchise, reappears in training after what seemed like an eternity. After endless weeks in uncertainty due to that uncomfortable quadriceps injury that made him miss almost the entire season, he is seen working intensely with the trainers on the field this Monday during the team walkthrough, running routes without contact and catching passes from Mariota and the third quarterback. McLaurin, 30 years of age and in his 7th professional season, suffered the initial injury in Week 3 against the Raiders when a defender hit him directly in the thigh during a crossing route, causing a massive hematoma and partial tear of the quadriceps. He tried to return bravely in Week 8 against Kansas City, but Ray aggravated it in the second half after barely 3 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. That seemed like the start of his triumphant return, and since then he has been in a medical limbo, frustrating for him, for offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, and for the entire organization. In total, McLaurin has played only 7 games this season, registering 13 receptions for 203 yards and a single touchdown, numbers that do not even come close to reflecting his elite talent and his importance to this attack. Every time McLaurin is not available, the offense becomes painfully predictable, and the risk of total collapse grows exponentially. It is enough to remember with nostalgia how the prolonged absence of Santana Moss in those dark years of the mid-2000s left the franchise completely without an answer. In moments of maximum pressure in fourth quarters and overtime, Moss was that magical receiver who always appeared on third and longs when everything seemed lost. The man of absolute trust for Jason Campbell and Mark Brunell in the red zone. The one who could convert a lost play into a 60-yard touchdown. With his electrifying speed and hands secure like cement. Without him, the offense of those Redskins of the mid-2000s crumbled pathetically in key games that defined seasons, including that painful collapse of 2006 when they lost the last 3 consecutive games and stayed out of playoffs by scoring difference. McLaurin fulfills exactly that same critical role today. He is the quiet leader of the offensive locker room, the professional who works in absolute silence and produces when his presence is needed most, the one who never complains publicly or on social media despite playing on mediocre teams during 5 of his first 6 seasons. This season has been an emotional ordeal seeing him from the sideline dressed in street clothes, knowing in our hearts that his presence on the field could have changed at least 2 or 3 of those 6 humiliating consecutive defeats, especially the tight falls against Detroit and Miami, where that trusted receiver was missing in critical plays. Now with McLaurin on the verge of return and working daily with the medical staff, the debate ignites passionately on radio programs and podcasts. Is it really worth forcing his return to barely fight for a few more victories that mean nothing in terms of playoffs, or is it infinitely better to think strategically about 2026 and not risk a fundamental pillar who can define the attack for the next 4 or 5 years? As a passionate narrator of this team, I firmly believe that having him back even limited gives hope, not only sportingly, but emotionally. It reactivates the morale of the locker room. That is on the floor sends a powerful message to the league that here nobody gives up until the last second, and makes it absolutely clear that this franchise has pride and professionalism regardless of the record. Young receivers like Jalen Lane, an undrafted rookie who has shined with flashes of greatness in the absence of McLaurin, and Deebo Samuel, who has carried the offense on his shoulders with more than 700 receiving yards, have taken important steps. Treylon Burks also gave promising flashes before his own devastating injury that required knee surgery and left him out for the entire season after a single game with the team. But none of them have the experience of 6 seasons, the perfect timing with any quarterback, nor the proven ability of McLaurin to change a complete game in a single vertical play of 60 yards or a 3rd and 15 converted at the exact moment. The recent history of the franchise is absolutely plagued with painful examples where protecting injured stars would have been the morally correct and strategically smart thing. When Clinton Portis heroically tried to play injured with a shoulder in 2009 against division rivals, his production fell into a nosedive from 1,000 to 100 yards to less than 500, and he never recovered his explosive form that had taken him to 2 consecutive Pro Bowls. When Trent Williams, the best left tackle of the decade, was forced to play with medical problems not diagnosed correctly by the staff for years, the relationship with the organization broke irreparably, and eventually we lost him in free agency to San Francisco, where he became All-Pro again. A wound that still hurts. McLaurin deserves infinitely better treatment than those cases, especially considering that he will enter free agency next year and the franchise desperately needs to re-sign him with a contract of $100 million. However, everything will depend critically on how he responds physically in this week's practices, and if he manages to avoid relapses, something that has been a recurring nightmare in previous Commanders seasons with players like Brandon Scherff and Jonathan Allen. If he can train all week without visible limitations and the doctors give the full green light, his return could be the emotional catalyst that this team desperately needs to close with dignity. If he cannot, it will be infinitely better to let him rest completely, protect him like gold, and build the entire attack around him in the next campaign with a healthy Daniels. Tell me honestly in the comments, does the return of McLaurin genuinely excite you, or would you prefer to protect him completely for next year? And when we seem to completely exhaust the arsenal of surprises of the day, another key piece adds dramatically to the chessboard. Noah Brown, veteran receiver, who was barely on the field for 2 games but promised explosive connection in preseason, is officially reactivated from the injured list and opens his regulatory window of 21 days to return to activity after devastatingly missing a large part of the year due to combined groin and knee problems that have pursued him since August. The coaches, led by receivers coordinator Bobby Engram, meticulously evaluate if he can return effectively to recompose a group of receivers that has taken on water without him, without a healthy McLaurin, and with Luke McCaffrey out for the entire season after cruciate ligament surgery. Brown, 29 years old, turned last month, is a veteran journeyman who passed through Dallas, Houston, and now desperately seeks to consolidate himself in Washington. But injuries have pursued him cruelly without mercy during his entire career. The personal history of Brown is a moving one of mental resilience and physical bad luck in equal parts. Selected in the 7th round of the draft of 2017 selection, 239 global by the Cowboys, Brown was never a media star or a name in headlines, but always fulfilled professionally his assigned role. Reliable number 3 or for receiver specialist, in intermediate routes of 15 yards over the middle, and reliable physical blocker in the ground game. That tackle's appreciated. In Dallas, he played for intermittent seasons, catching little more than 100 passes for 1,000 accumulated yards, modest but consistent numbers for a player of his profile. In 2024, he played with the Houston Texans, where he caught 43 passes for enough yards to earn another one-year contract, with Washington valued at $2 million with additional incentives for receptions. The preseason painted incredibly well and generated expectations immediate chemistry with Daniels. In the first practices, several long receptions of 40 yards in scrimmages, and a spectacular touchdown in the third preseason game that made the fans present in the stadium vibrate and generated thousands of positive comments on social media. But in week 2 of the regular season against Green Bay at Lambeau Field, a groin injury suffered in the first half took him off the field limping visibly, and he never returned again during 3 full months. Now, after endless months of daily rehabilitation, intensive physical therapy, and muscle strengthening work, the Commanders bet firmly on his return at the critical moment. The recent history of the franchise teaches us painfully that the Commanders have rarely had consistent real depth at that receiver position, something that inevitably usually takes a toll in December, when injuries accumulate and teams need rotation. When Deion Jackson was seriously injured in the hamstring in 2014 playing against Arizona, the offense was instantly left without that critical element of vertical speed that opened the entire field for the other receivers and allowed Kirk Cousins to attack stacked defenses. When Pierre Garcon went out injured in the playoffs of 2012 against Seattle, the lack of reliable options behind him left Griffin without escape valves on third down conversions, and the offense collapsed in the second half. This year of 2025, with Luke McCaffrey out for the entire season, after barely the games, and Burks requiring surgery after a single unfortunate game with the team, the receiver room has been an administrative and tactical disaster that has forced coordinator Kingsbury to juggle constantly with personnel. Brown represents an invaluable opportunity to add experience of 8 professional seasons and tactical versatility in an absolutely critical moment of the calendar. If Brown manages to recover game rhythm and renewed chemistry with the quarterback on duty, be it Mariota or eventually Daniels, Washington can close the campaign with professional dignity and dream realistically of destabilizing playoff rivals like Minnesota and Tampa Bay, even if only for locker room pride. But neither must we fall naively into exaggerated triumphalism. Reality is extremely hard, and every return must be handled with an absolutely cool head if we want 2026 to be something more than another painful reconstruction. Brown has a valid contract only for this season of 2025, so these last 6 games are literally his public audition both for Washington and for the rest of the league. In need of depth, a good performance with 50 receptions and 600 yards could secure him another year in Burgundy and Gold with a salary increase or open the golden doors to another contending team in need of depth at the position like Kansas City or Baltimore. Tactical analysts point specifically that his best contribution will be in short routes of 5 to 10 yards and medium ones of 15 to 20, where he can intelligently use his physique of 210 pounds and accumulated experience to gain crucial separation against Tampa zone defenses that Washington will face in the coming weeks. He is not an explosive receiver of 60 yards per reception to Deion Jackson style, but someone extremely reliable who can move the chains consistently on third and short, something that has been a constant technical problem this year with a conversion rate below 35%. Furthermore, his proven capacity as a physical blocker in the ground game adds another tactical dimension that younger players like Lane still do not dominate completely. After barely 1 professional season, if the staff decides to activate him officially soon from the injured list, he could realistically debut in one of the last 4 or 5 games of the calendar, giving him sufficient time to meet again with the brutal rhythm of game before the season definitely ends. Here goes my last direct question. Do you honestly think that Brown will be the differential X factor, or simply a symbolic return to cover the file and fill the roster? Make yourself heard passionately and subscribe, because the dramatic novel of the Commanders has not finished being written yet, and every week can give us an unexpected surprise.
Leave us your sincere opinion below about these 3 absolutely explosive pieces of news that shook today in Washington, and do not forget to activate notifications with the little bell, because here we tell you before absolutely anyone else everything that explodes is rumored and is confirmed in Burgundy and Gold. If you want to be aware of future last-minute bombs, hot trade rumors before the deadline, injuries that change seasons, and deep tactical analysis that you will not find anywhere else on YouTube or ESPN only, one thing I ask you: subscribe right now and join the most intense, passionate, and knowledgeable Commanders community on the entire platform. Every like you leave, every comment you write, and every subscription you confirm helps us directly to continue bringing you exclusive content of maximum quality and with the most reliable sources in the industry. Do not miss a single second of this exciting drama that is just beginning to unfold. See you in the next explosive video, and always remember this: here in Washington, D.C., there is always unshakable hope until the last second of the last game of the season, because we are Burgundy and Gold until death.